Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my new or updated patrons, Larry A, Tamir H, Gort, Victor E, and James B. Thank you all for choosing to support the channel. Just following up on a few things from yesterday, this clip is precisely why MSNBC and many others are a joke and are doing far more harm than good for society.
But then you also overnight have this post claiming that protests at Tesla dealerships are illegal. He said today he would label violence against dealerships domestic terrorism. Now, you know I am judicious in how I play this sound, but I think you need to hear it from him.
Mr. President talks about some of the violence that's been going on around the country at dealerships. Some say they should be labeled domestic terrorists.
I will do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. We catch anybody doing it because they're harming a great American company. Let me tell you, you do it to Tesla and you do it to any company, we're going to catch you and you're going to go through hell.
So just to be clear, you protest a private company, you are labeled by this administration a domestic terrorist.
Actually, to be clear, Trump was specifically asked about violence against Tesla, not just protesting. Two different things. So if you want to protest peacefully, go ahead. That's your right. But shooting up Tesla locations or blowing up vehicles, throwing rocks through Tesla windows, spray painting and or keying Tesla vehicles is not at all a peaceful protest. So yes, you should be punished for doing those things. Apparently, this MSNBC host has atrocious listening comprehension skills or just doesn't care and wants to push the narrative she's being told from the top. And this right here is a big reason why I've always hated politics. You have Elizabeth Warren saying grocery prices are soaring, housing costs are skyrocketing, retirement savings are plummeting. But Donald Trump thought today would be a good day to play car salesman. But you know what? Here's the thing, Liz. You didn't say anything about inflation or housing costs when Biden was president, but now Trump wants to support an American company, and now's the time to talk about all of these things, which aren't even factually accurate. But I'm getting into this because let's be fair and balanced. Biden did a very similar stunt with GM and Stellantis vehicles, and I didn't see anyone complaining about that at the time, despite the fact that Stellantis is headquartered in the Netherlands. So what Trump and Tesla did is not nefarious like some people are trying to make it out to be. The president of America should be championing great American companies, creating American jobs, and keeping our manufacturing base alive as we head into the era of AI. Trump supports Elon just like Biden supported his UAW buddies. And one thread to watch, there has been a formal request for the Trump administration to open up an investigation into ActBlue. ActBlue is said to be linked to financing attacks on Tesla showrooms and Elon, among other violent protests across the country. Elon replied saying this is domestic terrorism and will be treated as such, as the president said. If you happen to look at Google search trends for the past 90 days in the United States, you will see quite the surge for the term buy a Tesla the past few days. If nothing else, hopefully this will help to dispel the myth that Teslas cost $200,000. And my purpose for what I'm about to share is not to trigger anyone, it's just to share some of the love and support that Tesla and Elon are getting from all groups and worldviews, contrary to what the media is trying to make it look like. Plus, I just think if that's your thing, that's a pretty sick wrap in a color that you don't often see. And the Electric Israeli said, I support Elon and Tesla, so I'm buying my Tesla number 6. And this post has done over 1 million impressions. And Steven, an Electrified community member, said, my anti-EV father just said he might buy a Tesla, massive new market just unlocked. And here are the receipts to prove it. Sean Hannity confirmed he bought his Model S Plaid, and he's also going to give away a Tesla on Hannity.com. So look, the real question remains, how is all of this going to shake out? The truth is, nobody really knows. Q1 should have a decent boost, but plenty of Republicans that may now be looking into Tesla for the first time may take time to place an order, so those wouldn't hit until Q2 or beyond. Of course, some on the left will not want a Tesla given the more public endorsement from Trump because there is a group that hates everything Trump does. And while this group is great at making themselves heard, it's certainly not the majority because let's not forget, for the past decade, it was the left that was championing EVs and Elon and Tesla. So they know that under all the noise right now that Tesla is great for the country, great for the environment, and that they're the best EVs on the road and really the best cars in general from a value perspective. Sticking to facts though, over 75 million people voted for Trump, which is just under 50% of voters. There's roughly 250 million people in America over the age of 18, and while not many 18-year-olds will have money for a Tesla, don't forget about parents buying for children. So if we surmise that the nearly 50% of voters that chose Trump also applies to the broader population, we'll call that 124 million people that may align with Trump. Even if just 1% of that group would now actually consider buying a Tesla after Trump's endorsement, that's 1.24 million potential incremental buyers of Teslas. And I would add, once more Tesla vehicles penetrate the circles of those on the right politically, the butts in seats effect will happen and they'll realize how sick Teslas really are and how close FSD is to unsupervised. So for me, I'd say the Trump endorsement will be a net positive for Tesla's sales, despite additional short-term blowback from those on the left that's likely to be short-lived because again, they already know how great Teslas are. And again, hopefully Tesla as a political lightning rod has mostly subsided by mid-2026, and then both sides of the aisle will be free to simply buy the best product, which will still be a Tesla. And hey, you can call me overly optimistic, but I just think Tesla will solve for unsupervised by 2026, and once the word spreads that you can buy a car for $30,000 that lets you play on your phone or watch TV while you ride, it's just going to be lights out, and people will put their political angst aside rather quickly when that happens. Elon has officially kicked off his appeal at the Delaware Supreme Court. The opening appeal brief from Elon and his team said that counterintuitive result defies settled principles of Delaware law, sound corporate governance, and common sense. As a reminder, Tesla has said creating a new pay package of similar value could result in a charge of $25 billion. A law professor from Tulane said yes, Tesla has a chance to succeed with its new appeal, but the situation is complicated by the fact that the entire decision has turned into a political football. And I'm no lawyer, but I would argue in this case that may actually work in Tesla's favor. We've talked at length about other high-profile companies exiting Delaware. There's already new legislation being worked on that would give shareholders less leverage in future cases like this. So in summary, Delaware knows it needs to stop the bleeding. And finally, in the appeal brief, Elon and team argued that Judge McCormick wrongly applied a very difficult legal standard known as entire fairness. This is actually Delaware's most stringent standard of review that's applied to corporate transactions, and usually those involving conflicts of interest. In short, it's designed to protect shareholders by making sure that these transactions are equitable and not self-serving to those in control. There's really two main components to apply this standard. Number one is fair dealing, and number two is a fair price. Number one focuses on things like how the transaction was started, how it was structured, how the negotiations went, was there independence of the directors, and of course for number two, fair price, are the economics of this deal actually reasonable? But the reason this entire fairness was problematic for Elon and Tesla is because under that, usually the burden of proof actually falls on the defendants, which is Elon and Tesla, which means they're the ones that have to actually prove everything was a fair dealing and it was a fair price. The thing is, this burden of proof can be shifted back to the plaintiff, which would be the 9-share shareholder in this case, if the transaction was approved by a fully independent special committee or a fully informed, uncoerced vote of the majority of minority shareholders. So why did Judge McCormick decide to apply the entire entire fairness rule? Well, mostly because she decided that Elon had a lot of control over Tesla, owning about 22% of the stock at the time. Not only that, but his close relationship with members on the board, and certain evidence that Elon was a big part of the negotiation process, aka there was a lack of director independence. And you may already know the answer to the fair price part of the analysis because Judge McCormick called the amount that Elon was set to receive unfathomable. So in her eyes, it wasn't economically reasonable. So look, I have no idea if this specific precedent will hold up, but I did find there was a case back in 2015 where a fully informed, uncoerced vote did actually change the situation. It shifted the review to the business judgment rule away from the entire fairness rule, which is what Tesla would want. The problem with that is Judge McCormick already ruled that a post-trial ratification cannot fix a conflicted controller transaction under the current law. And for me, on the fair price thing, maybe that number was unfathomable to Judge McCormick, but don't forget, Tesla soared past $1 trillion in market cap when the top milestone was only $650 billion, and that one was unfathomable for many people at the time this was created. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a lawyer and I have a beat on how this is going to go. I just want to share some insight in case you want to pursue further threads on your own. I'm still of the camp we won't have this resolved until closer to the end of 2025, and given the political lightning rod that this case is, there will likely be some fireworks in the months ahead. Not a Tesla app has heard from a trusted source that within the next 2 weeks, Cybertruck will be getting an FSD update. This one is set to finally include features like Start FSD from Park, the ability to reverse, the ability to park at your destination rather than initiating auto park, and probably the biggest update would be the improved controller, which should in theory allow the Cybertruck to make better FSD decisions, and overall just be a bit more smooth from an operations standpoint. And of course, I can't forget Actually Smart Summon is expected to arrive as well. I don't know the specifics of this one, but Michael Dell said he had a productive discussion with Trump, Elon, and other tech CEOs about enhancing government efficiency and accelerating US leadership in AI and technology. And you already know one of the most important AI threads will be embodied AI, aka FSD and Optimus. So hopefully sometime later this year we get an update on the progress when it comes to a federal framework for regulating autonomous vehicles.
Someone has told me that you've abandoned ship on castings and gone to sheet metal. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, 3 or 4 of our factories were already doing the front end in sheet metal.
Yeah.
Only Texas, and then for a little while, Berlin built the full structural battery pack with the castings front and rear. And when we went to this vehicle, we went back to one common body across the globe because we wanted to make sure that we had good interchangeability between each of our factories. We run into supply chain issues. And so this has a modified version of what was in the old Model Ys with the front end, and the rear end is still cast, and we actually redid the whole rear casting. It's about 7 kilos lighter now. It's got about half the machining on it.
So the new rear casting is about 15 pounds lighter, but the new Model Y will no longer have a front gigacast. They're going back to the tried and true sheet metal. Lars did say it was a supply chain decision, but now Tesla will have more capacity for gigacast, so maybe they'll be used for the more affordable upcoming models. There was some other interesting engineering tidbits in that video, but I think a lot of you have already seen that. If not, I'll have the full thing linked below. And I'm sure some of you will like this. Dan Ives is putting his foot down, basically calling Elon Musk back to Tesla. It sounds like the recent dip in Tesla stock price is not sitting well with his clients.
And this has been, I think, clock struck midnight. I mean, this is now at a point where it's a tipping point where Musk needs to focus back on Tesla. And that's why I say it's a moment of truth. We've been here before, but this is, I think, tipped the scales, and we're seeing it in stock. Because the last thing that you want is Tesla to become a political symbol, but now you need Musk to lead. It's time to come home and start to focus back on Tesla, and that's been a huge issue here. Investors have given, sort of some flexibility. But now it's hit a tipping point. I think you've seen it in the stock. Frustration's building. You have to be CEO of Tesla at this point. And look, Trump buying a Tesla, I mean, it's not moving the needle. And to some extent, it actually have a negative impact relative to the political symbol. And I think that's the frustration here.
So clearly I don't agree with Dan on this. I do of course understand the sentiment, but Elon could still be taking calls or making quick trips to solve problem points like he always has. And as long as the AI and FSD teams continue to make progress and the manufacturing ramp to the new Y and preparation for the new models goes well, he really doesn't need to be there holding hands with people constantly. That's the benefit of having 120,000 talented employees. And I already explained why I think the Trump endorsement, and maybe even more so the pushback and the show of Tesla support against the attacks, will be a net positive. To me, it just sounds like Dan is sick of hearing from his clients complaining about Tesla stock because he's had one of the highest price targets on the street. And now he's publicly trying to call Elon to put out a short-term fire with the Tesla stock price when we know Elon doesn't really care about that. Remember that social media post Kia Norway put up with the sticker, "I bought this after Elon went crazy"? Well, they have since deleted that post. They came out and said it was intended as humor and not meant to offend. The goal was to show there are other options for those looking for an electric car. The idea came from us here in Norway and was not initiated by Kia centrally. And their head of communications said humor resonates differently in different countries. Tesla stock closed the day at $248.09, up 7.59%, while the Nasdaq was up 1.13%. So a significant outperformance from Tesla. It was another higher volume day, trading about 48% above the average. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Please like the video if you did. You can find me on X, linked below, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.